Alright, so I used trailer footage for most of this video originally, but turns out even after altering it, that doesn't really get around copyright. Not sure what I was thinking there. So enjoy some shitty gameplay of me playing the finals. I am now a gameplay commentary YouTuber. I do not get the Ballerina reviews at all, honestly. So I just got out of seeing Ballerina, and by just getting out, I mean I saw it like 2 or 3 days ago and I'm just getting around to recording this. I went into the movie pretty open-minded. I've been going to see a lot of movies lately without looking at reviews ahead of time, and I know it's nothing revolutionary to say this, but if you haven't done that before, I suggest trying it. It's a lot more fun that way, in my opinion. That being said, I went in with no predisposition to what people were saying. I love John Wick, like the franchise in general. I've accepted at this point that, the more movies they make in this franchise, the more sloppy and messy the story of the world is going to get. It's not going to make as much sense. I was a big fan in the first couple how vague the rules were, and there wasn't a ton of explanation to how things worked, but at this point it's been kind of explained quite thoroughly, and the more they're building on it, it's just going to get sloppier. Regardless of that, I still was open to this film. I thought it could be good, and it wasn't the worst thing ever. I'm not out here like any toxic male YouTuber like,
oh, it sucked because she's a woman and she's powerful, blah, blah, blah.
It's nothing like that. I just thought the movie was not as good as people were making it out to be. And when I came out of the film and saw it was like 7, 8 out of 10s across the board, it threw me for a loop, honestly, because I felt like I did not watch the same movie. It just did not hold up that well. And I just wanted to talk about some of those reasons today.
Spoilers ahead if I didn't say that already.
First thing I wanted to get out of the way was the casting of the film. Overall, it wasn't a significantly tremendous or terrible cast or anything, but I think the two big ones I had issues with are the biggest roles of the film, the main villain and Ana de Armas. Starting with the main villain, I don't remember his name. It was an interesting kind of setup with him being a cult leader, but his performance I felt was pretty weak. There was nothing notable or intimidating about him. He reminded me of Christoph Waltz, the guy from Inglourious Basterds. I think that's his name. In terms of looks, but he did not carry any sort of intimidation factor or anything that struck fear into people or even some sort of emotion. Really, it just kind of felt nothing with him. And then as far as Ana de Armas goes, I've seen her in a ton of stuff. I don't know what her most notable role is, but I know she's a great actress and I've seen her in movies that I like. But this I just felt like was a wrong casting choice for this character. The John Wick shoes are huge shoes to fill, and Keanu did such a great job over the course of the movies of having this intensity about him and conveying so much emotion without having to say much. Whereas her, on the other hand, I feel like she just did not have that intensity about her. Anytime she talked about her motivations, I just did not buy it personally. Her delivery of maybe it was the writing, I don't know, but her delivery of the lines just felt very dainty and not like she had that conviction about her to go get this revenge. Again, I don't know if that's the writing. I personally think it's the casting. When I picture this type of character, I picture someone more like Florence Pugh's character from Thunderbolts and that type of attitude and the way she carries herself in that movie. She could prove me wrong in future movies because I know they're going to make 10 billion more of these. And that kind of gets into the story now. Like I said at the beginning, I've accepted that we've gotten away from the vague rules and world building that they set up in the first film or two. And, the more movies they make, the more time they spend in this world, they're going to have to flesh things out, and not everything's going to mesh too well together. By the end of the fourth John Wick movie, I felt like we were kind of getting to that point as it was. And this one, I feel like we've definitely crossed that line a bit. Again, it's not unwatchable. It's not terrible. It's not like I can nitpick every single little thing that doesn't work well with each other. It's just a personal feeling I got watching the film. The setup for Eve's character just felt kind of by the books, same as John Wick, but not as sad as losing obviously losing a parent is just as sad, if not sadder, but it didn't have as big of an impact as the first John Wick movie. So it kind of just felt like a step down from that to begin with. On top of her not having that conviction, it felt like throughout the whole movie, and just the way that things played out did not feel very well executed. The cult town was a pretty cool concept, but just I think with the combination of it kind of showing up at the end and not really being fleshed out throughout the movie too much, and the main villain not being too intimidating, like I said, I think it just didn't land as well as it could have. It honestly barely came off as a cult. It kind of more or less was just felt like a bunch of goons. And yes, I'm using the old version of the word goon, not the new version. Another thing the John Wick movies have always done a tremendous job of, on top of just obviously the action as a whole, is just the general pacing of the entire films. the way they handle the gradual increase of tension throughout the whole series has always been very well handled in my opinion. And I see a lot of people giving similar sentiments towards this film, but this might be my hottest take on the whole thing. I feel like this movie is a complete step back as far as the action scenes go. You know, outside of a few cool kills here and there, I remember there was a few with some ice skates that were pretty cool. There was the grenade stuff that was kind of fun. But outside of that, it felt pretty lackluster. There wasn't much that stood out to me. If you've seen the film or if you've just listened to people talk about it, I'm sure you've heard of towards the climax of the film, there's this battle between Eve and another dude who's just kind of like this menacing big guy that's in the cult, and they're just battling off with a couple of flamethrowers. I think that's what they intended to be the big action set piece that stood out to everyone and was memorable. And maybe that was for most people. I got sick of it really quick. I felt like Zack Snyder took over the directing role there for a second. It felt like there was a lot of slow-mo throughout the whole sequence. The choreography didn't make much sense to me. It just brought the whole pacing of the final action set piece to a screeching halt, and it got drug out for just way too long. Eve comes out with the flamethrower, and it's kind of fun at first. It's like World at War rules where everyone's just dying instantly. They're not shooting back at all the second they get hit with flames. She's wearing the actual like protective gear that you wear with a flamethrower, and it's not covering her whole body, granted, but she's got more protection than this other dude that comes out with the other flamethrower, and she immediately runs and ducks from him. I don't get why she wouldn't just go straight for the kill right there. It just, that part was not thought out. And then the way she eventually beats him by shooting a fire hose and it just being like a Harry Potter wizard battle with the beams and shit. I could tell they were trying to make that the big thing for this film, and maybe that landed better for a lot of other people, but for me, I was just honestly rolling my eyes during that part. And I can suspend my disbelief for a lot of the shit in these movies, but that was just, I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit during that. And I just wish they would have done something else for their big action set piece, honestly. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the John Wick tie-in to this movie. Of course, they were always going to rope it into his story somehow. You know, why else would they have set it in the same universe as this? And honestly, I'm pretty cool with it being set between the third and fourth movie. I think that makes sense. However, I do kind of feel like they should have just kept his role pretty minimal and just more so what they did towards the beginning of the film when they introduced him. It would have tied Ballerina into his world without taking the focus away from her, and having John Wick kind of just be, I don't want to say a mentor role, but he just shows up for a very short period while he's on his mission. I did not like when they tied him back into the end. I felt that was not a good choice. It really downplayed the role of the villain again, made him seem weaker because he couldn't take care of stuff himself. And even the action scenes with him felt kind of underwhelming. And I kind of had this issue with the fourth John Wick movie. It's an unfortunate truth. Keanu Reeves is just kind of getting to a point where you can tell he's aged a bit and it's harder for him to do stuff. I just recall seeing the fourth film in theaters and noticing a few scenes here and there where you could kind of tell some of the background actors had to wait a little bit longer than maybe a few years prior they would have had to for Keanu to get through some of his stunts. And that's not a knock to him. He still did an incredible job, but I think that's where they should have left it. If they were so intent on wrapping him back up into the story towards the end of the film, I just would have gone about it in a completely different way. We've spent 4 movies now seeing the action from John Wick's perspective. I think this would have just been the perfect opportunity to flip the script and show it from the bad guy's perspective of this horrifying supernatural force that just nobody can stop, and he's taking people out almost in like a Batman stealth kill type of thing. I know Batman doesn't kill, but that type of way where you just, no one can do anything about it. And we kind of see more or less just the aura of John Wick. You know, how people talk about him in the stories and how he got the Baba Yaga nickname and all that shit. I think that would have been a fun little twist rather than just more standard action scenes. But, you know, who am I to say? I don't know shit about fuck. It would have been like the Darth Vader shit at the end of Rogue One, just showing him being such a badass in a modern film, I guess. Not that the John Wick movies aren't modern. I'm not explaining that well. So yeah, overall, I just don't think this movie was as good as a lot of people are claiming it to be. It's not complete garbage or anything like that. Definitely the weakest of the franchise, but it's not unbearable or painful to watch. outside of the flamethrower scene, I was so like tired of that. Just dragged on for so long, it felt like. But yeah, 7 and 8 out of 10s I don't really buy. I personally feel this is more of a 4, 5 out of 10 type movie. My Letterboxd review, I think I gave it like a 1.5 out of 5, which is kind of harsh. I think I was probably just being a bitch and a little grouchy that day. I probably don't stand by that. Maybe I'd make it more of like a 2.5 out of 5. But yeah, 4 or 5 out of 10. One last itty bitty little nitpick I just thought of before I wrap this up, though, is just that there was not one piece of notable music or any part of the score for that matter in this film that I noticed at all, besides the scenes with John Wick and they played his theme. And I think that's something she's severely lacking. I feel like that would have helped define her a little bit more. So that being said, it may be a 3 or 4 out of 10 now instead. Let me know what you thought of it, if you think I'm an idiot or if you agree with some of my points. I'd like to hear what the general sentiment is. Just remember, as always, it is of course okay to be wrong. But yeah, that's my video. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to join Frog Gang. Bye.